Hey, it's Ryan and Haylie from Ticor Title on a Friday. What's happening?
What's up? Happy Friday, everybody. We made it through. For all of those in title and escrow, made it through the end of the month. So
Month is a little early.
Always a little crazy for us. So we are now into spooky fall season, and we're into November, and it's 100 degrees outside, October. October.
Well, either way, it's 100 degrees outside. Holy cannoli. It is our special girl, Katie Methy. It's her birthday. Say hi to the birthday girl.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. And
She's the one who runs it.
she's running the show over here. You just saw all the sanity on the team over there. Now you're stuck with crazy. So we have another episode of, what is it? Ticor Title Talk. Okay.
Yeah, and we put out a poll and we got tons of awesome responses. So
yes,
thank you guys. We put out a poll and kind of we're throwing it out there, like, what would you prefer to hear about? We just kind of do a quick little training session. We don't want to take up too much of your Friday. So put out a poll. What do you guys want to hear about? Is it subject to investing, or would you rather hear about the difference in policies? And we heard
overwhelming response was subject to.
Subject to.
So it's an Ask the Audience Friday, and we asked the audience, and we can get to the difference between policies another time. We'll do that as like a plays of the week or something. But the audience has responded, and they want to know subject to. So tell us a little bit of a lead-in on like what is subject to, what's the concept, what's it look like?
Right. So subject to, like when you get a preliminary report and you're reading it and you see vesting subject to, and you're looking and you're like, wait, that's not who I have. That's not who I have in title. I actually have, say it's an LLC, or say it's, she's a married, sold and separate, or she got divorced and now she's single and this is her property, but there was a interspousal deed, or there was something that was maybe in the chain of title that wasn't completely clear to the title company of who clear title should be. So when you get your preliminary reports and you see a vesting and it says subject to. So
subject to whatever kind of criteria?
Yeah, so it will say subject to item number 12. And you go to item number 12 and say it's a deed that was transferred from an individual into a trust, but it wasn't insured. It was just done by an attorney, and the person just went down and insured it, but now they're going to sell the property. Do you mind flicking that off on the side? Sorry.
So it's the subject to that
subject
transfer.
To the transfer of that individual putting it into the trust without being insured by a title company, because now that they're going to sell it, we need to make sure that who in fact is going to be selling the property on behalf of the trust is that correct person. So
that's where you might get an affidavit of uninsured deed to, bridge the gap.
Right, but if it's a trust, then we need to get trust documentation. Say it's, Ryan Lipsey, the trust dated Ryan Lipsey Trust 1920 or
Whoa, I knew I was old, but dang, that would put me in the ground, man.
I wasn't even thinking. I have no idea where that date came out of. Anyways, so
Ryan, you young whippersnapper, I would have got away with it too if it wasn't for you pesky kids.
But we need to make sure that Ryan is in fact, the person that's going to be is the correct signer on the trust, and we need to ensure that that is the correct person and they are able to sign off. So we would either require a trust cert if it's just Ryan Lipsey on behalf of the Ryan Lipsey Trust. We would just need a trust cert verifying that
subject to those items.
Subject to.
So that is the title world's explanation of subject to. And I, as such an old codger,
the 1920s out there.
I'm familiar with these old ways of. So subject to back in the day was an investor would come in and the seller had like picture 5 years from now when the interest rates are like 11%. Or something, right? Or imagine a hypothetical world where that was the case, right? And then you go to a seller and they have like 2.75 locked in, awesome financing. So a buyer can come in and take over the loan, purchase the property subject to the financing in place. So it's kind of like called a wrap. It's definitely creative financing, but you can purchase a property, take over the loan that's in place, take over payments subject to that loan, and still obtain title insurance.
Yeah, right? That's pretty common. I mean, we do still see that. We do still have that come up. So that definitely happens, and that's a little outside.
It's almost like a seller finance. You've heard of seller carryback, where the seller finances the incoming buyer, and they just hold the note and basically keep whatever financing they had in place, or if it was like paid off or what have you, and they come up with their own terms. They just basically don't do a new note or come up with new terms. They keep whatever institutional lender was in place with the 2.75%, and the incoming buyer says, I want that. And so they buy it subject to financing in place. Done. So those are the two different subject to scenarios I can come up with. I mean,
yeah, and then I could think of we talked about uninsured deed affidavits. What about, or uninsured deeds? What about, we've had estranged spouses come up recently.
Oh Lord, yeah.
That's been another one. So we've had what if you're on title as husband and wife, but you're an estranged spouse? I mean, that's not necessarily subject to, but we did have this come up where
they couldn't find the husband, or the wife went to the jungle and could never be located again. And so what do you do in that case? You have to have a judge get a ruling and forcibly take it out of the married joint tenancy and put it into the woman if they find in favor.
Right, and I mean, we've unfortunately had circumstances where the deal kind of just died because you do have interest, unfortunately, especially in the state of California, common property, common law, and you get married, and unfortunately, if you have that home, that's your guys's. So the husband off to the jungle, legitimately gone, nobody knew where he was. And unfortunately, in those circumstances, either we get a judge and we can see if we can kind of have that pushed into the favor of the wife, or who knows what we could get that out of the court system. But initially, that kind of deal is a little harder to work with, but we get creative. We can see what we can do.
Well, even in a probate case, I think of the people that say, but Ryan, I have a will. I have a will in place. My seller has a will, and then the grandma passed or what have you. And so you could say that execution and sale of that property is subject to judge approval. Because they have to approve the will. So always do talk to an estate planning attorney, do a trust, a revocable trust, or talk to a planner, a professional about it. But a will doesn't cut it in California. It still has to go to the judge, and he decides if they probate it out or if the will stands, and then XYZ professional can sell the property. So it's subject to court approval, right?
Yeah, and that is something that we get all the time on the title unit. Well, there's a will. They passed away, but they were on title as, a single woman or a single man, but they passed away, but they have a will. And unfortunately, in the state of California, a will doesn't really hold up. It has to be in a trust. So you need trust attorneys, or if you guys have any estate planning attorneys, let us know. We can definitely help out with that if you guys need somebody. But if I were a real estate agent, that would be one of my vendors in my back pocket. If every buyer I was working with, I would suggest you should probably get your property put into a trust after this. Just because it's the easiest, and you don't want to deal with, God knows something happens to you. You don't want your family fighting. We all have heard the stories. We've all heard the sisters don't talk to each other because they feel that there was some kind of
animosity built up. Somebody got jobbed on the deal or didn't get their fair share.
Yeah, and so you wouldn't want that to happen to your loved one. So I would just suggest always putting your property into a trust.
It's not a comfortable conversation. You're talking about do not resuscitate stuff. You're talking about personal choices, but you get it done. You get a plan in place, and then because your voice ceases to be a voice when you're gone, right? So if you want to have a voice beyond the grave, put an estate plan together. The last subject 3, still on subject 2, is I know a lot of law firms around town where they will, instead of foreclosing and taking back a property, they'll find a buyer and be able to keep the lender, instead of the lender having to go through the foreclosure process, the lender will take it and find a buyer right away and do a subject to transaction. That's where they basically bypass the MLS, bypass the whole market, and just transfer property to a new buyer that's subject to that financing.
And just taking it on their new loan, and
and it gives the lender a recourse other than the foreclosure process, which if you go through a judicial foreclosure, you're losing the money that you're making on that loan anyway. And a lot of lenders do, so.
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard that when I was actually on the title unit, all the lender does is they just have to approve the fact that you as the incoming buyer are going to go subject to, and, whether that be, say there's even a lien on there, say there's some kind of, I want to say it was maybe an HOA lien we were dealing with on there, and the sellers didn't have the money to pay for it, but the buyers were like, we'll pay for it, we'll clear it off, we need to close this deal, so we'll go subject to on this and we'll pay it off. The lender approved it, they had the funds to clean it up, pay it off, so they went subject to on that lien on the title policy so they could close the transaction, get the transaction done. They had that on their final title policy, but they paid for the lien, they cleared it off because they wanted the house so bad.
Right.
So they were able to take on the property, get it closed quick enough, and they just went subject to and then paid it off and got the lien release. So that's another circumstance you can go subject to on if you want something that bad.
Yeah,
also,
with the 10 buyers for every listing right now, it's not a horrible way to look at it.
No,
there
definitely.
might be other inventory, shadow inventory, as they say, right?
Definitely not, yeah. And then, so subject to also, it's just for title purposes, it's just what title insurance needs to be able to clear something on the chain to make sure that we can ensure the incoming buyer is free and clear of any judgments or liens from that seller. So like we said, just we need to make sure that the trust is clear. If it's an uninsured deed, if it's an uninsured deed, we need to make sure that that was the intent of the previous grantor to the new grantee. We need to get an uninsured deed affidavit. That is a very, very common subject to. We see uninsured deeds all the time. And then, as Ryan was talking about, like financing purposes to subject to.
Just take acquire the property subject to current financing in place, and now it became your financing. So, while you're out there in the wonderful world of real estate and real estate finance, you're going to run into subject to from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
At a minimum, you have a working knowledge. At a maximum, call us. We deal with this stuff every day. I have, my dad's been doing it since 1974. Her mom's been doing loans since how long? Quite a while.
A long time, before I was born.
And
30 years.
And we get behind this wall here at Ticor. We have 65 employees that understand this stuff really well. So just remember subject to, remember Haylie and Ryan, and we can help you out and give you guidance on that. We're actually pumped too. So thank you so much for making us a part of the team.
Yeah.
And on the first wonderful weekend of October, no shortage of sports. Go Padres. We got big game tonight.
I know, we didn't wear our Padres stuff. I just realized that. We should have been wearing Padres stuff. It's okay.
It's so hot.
Isn't it such a bummer? I'll just bring it up. The one year the Padres are like doing exceptionally well.
And we can't go to Petco.
Typically, we just go to Petco just to drink because the Padres aren't playing very well, so we're just there to drink and hang out.
It's a pretty nice place to hang out.
Yeah, and now they're actually doing good, and the games would actually be entertaining and fun, and you'd be yelling in the crowds, not hearing all the Dodgers or Giants fans going crazy every time.
Dodgers.
So, those
Go
Padres.
Go subject to a victory tonight. We will be playing deeper into the playoffs. So see what I did there? I used that.
I saw what you did there.
Okay,
But
perfect.
anytime you guys get a preliminary report, if you see subject to in the vesting and you're like, wait, this isn't who I have signing, don't freak out. Always give us a call. We are definitely here to help. And those are easy situations that we handle all the time to help take care of.
Yeah, you'd be like Shelby. You'd be like, "What happened to subject one?" I don't know.
Subject one.
Well, what? Okay.
Subject one.
So this is your team here at Ticor. We're super pumped to be part of the team. Thank you so much for tuning in to Ticor Title Talks Ask the Audience edition. I think next week we're back to top 5 something. We better come up with something before Friday. Huh?
If you guys have any top 5 that
Top
you want
five.
to let
Message
us
below.
know, if you guys have any like cool wins or cool stories, top 5 issues that you guys have been having.
Yeah, what's a challenge you've had in title that you would like us to bring and shed a light on or bring some clarity to? We love that. So audience feedback is awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you, and I hope you guys get out there this weekend. It's going to be an enjoyable, beautiful weekend.
The
I
surf's
mean,
been rad too.
Okay, the surf
Pumping.
has been insane. I will get crushed out there. So I'm not.
I watch from the sand.
Yeah, I
these
watch
days.
from the sand right now. I'm not going out there. I'm like struggling.
Thanks, Liz.
Anyways, thank you so much. But
Okay.
have a great weekend, guys. Get some sun. Enjoy.
Ryan, Haley, Shelby, Katie from Ticor Titles signing off. We appreciate you guys. Have a great weekend.
Bye.